Yet another example of the Trump administration really doing away with traditional long-standing U.S. foreign policy.
That's absolutely right. As you say, the US had not taken a position on the South China Sea after that 2016 United Nations Tribunal ruling, which ruled against China and in favor of the Philippines when it came to those claims. Now, of course, it has changed that policy. So that, of course, is significant. It's directed at the maritime issues in the South China Sea rather than the land masses, the islands, the reefs, the atolls that China has been building up. But nonetheless, it is seen, and US officials have been saying this, they want to give cover to other smaller nations. You could look at Vietnam, for example, and Malaysia to pursue their claims in terms of territorial rights in the South China Sea. And it's a pushback by the US as well against what is seen as an increasingly assertive Chinese president's presence in a very gas and oil-rich region, and of course strategically very significant as well. The concern is you're going to see more naval operations by both the Chinese and the US, and we're seeing that already. And of course there is always the risk of an accident or a clash that could flare up into something else. But in terms of the policy, it is significant. Again, the US saying that they're trying to give cover to smaller nations in the region to pursue their claims.
Tom, when it comes to Hong Kong, at least, I suppose this can be seen as a de-escalation, the US formally taking one pretty nuclear option off the table.
It was going to be seen as a huge option, of course, significant option, which is breaking that Hong Kong dollar peg, the nuclear option, as you described it. We know that State Department officials discussed this, or aides had, as a potential option in how the US responds to the implementation of this security law by Hong Kong. And they were looking potentially at the options of restricting US dollars to some of those Hong Kong banks that would have potentially led to that collapse in the Hong Kong dollar peg, or the break of that peg. Now that option, as you say, appears to be off the table. The Treasury Department, aides in that department pushing back, very concerned that there would be a blowback on the US, that it would ultimately hurt US companies and the US economy as well. So that option, as you say, is taken off the table. Other areas of conflict that we've seen between the US and China, of course, we've seen the US put sanctions in place on some top senior Chinese officials, including a member of the Politburo, over what the United Nations says are human rights abuses in Xinjiang, the internment of at least 1 million Muslims there. Well, China has responded by putting sanctions on Marco Rubio and Senator Ted Cruz as well. Again, the implementation or implications of this are less significant because neither of these senators are likely to travel to China anytime soon, but it does again point to the increasing rhetoric between the two sides. So, again, across a broad range of issues, whether it's technology, the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, the South China Sea, or Xinjiang and Hong Kong, of course, the tensions remain very high indeed between Beijing and Washington.
And on that technology front, after months and months of speculating whether or not the UK would ban Huawei from their 5G networks, we might be getting closer to an answer.
Absolutely. We should get an announcement. It's expected later today in the Commons in London. And what we're hearing is that, and this is no big surprise given what we've heard over the last few months, that the UK will indeed pursue and put in place a ban on Huawei technology in 2 phases. So they will ban new equipment from Huawei being put into the telecoms networks by the end of 2020. And then by 2027, the end of 2027, they want to see all Huawei equipment ripped out of the UK's telecoms networks. It's an about face. It's a change for the UK, which had tried to come to some middle way and compromise when it comes to Huawei. But they say, and officials in London say, that the decision by the US to add additional sanctions on Huawei has changed the calculation. They can no longer be trusted in terms of the chips and other devices and other hardware that Huawei would need to buy, that those are now seen as untrustworthy by security officials in London. So we do expect that change to be announced later today in the UK.